Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I are ready to preview the 2021-2022 season with you. And our first victim is the lowly Pacific Division. Justin, I feel like for some reason, this is season 5 for us, right? Is it season 5?
Is it really?
Or 4?
Oh my! I would probably guess season 4, but
we started 2017-18. So 2017, 18, 19, 20. This is season number 5, man.
Dude,
this is it right here. Season 5. I mean, think about the TV shows that make it to season 5. Like, those are usually some good shows. I mean, when it comes to TV shows, I feel like usually around season 5 is when you start to be like, I don't like the show that much anymore, but I have to keep watching because I've devoted so much of my life to this show. But
I'm invested.
Hopefully our show is continually getting better. That's the hope. Hopefully we didn't peak after like episode 9. That would be sad.
Episode 9.
I want to go back and listen to episode 9 and just see how much better it was than what we're doing now.
Dude.
But yeah, well, I'll just say congratulations to you and to me and to us because we made it 5 years. That's an achievement in the podcasting world. That's an achievement for pretty much anything in life. I don't know how many things I have done for 5 years.
That's a good point. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually, for those who don't know, my full-time regular job is just HR, right? So I was interviewing a candidate for a position at my company. And I always ask the question, just as like a curveball to get people thinking really, really quick. The first thing I ask them, because they're expecting a question like, oh, yeah, what are your skills? How are you going to be awesome at this job, whatever. Sure. And I say, tell me something about yourself that other people would be surprised to know. And this guy busted out. He's just like, yeah, I used to host a podcast. I'm like, great. Tell me about it. And it was a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. What a nerd. Yeah. But good for him. And I was like, cool, yeah, what's your podcast name? And I was like totally into it, wanted to check it out. He's like, well, we stopped doing it in 2019. We only did it for like 2 years. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bummer. But he asked for ours, which was great. But
nice.
Yeah, now that you think about it, in retrespect, right, he only went 2 years. And I'm thinking we were on 5. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, starting our 5th year. Yeah, it's crazy. I think I guess technically we've now been going for 4 years. But, no end in sight.
Season 5, here we come.
Season 5, it's on. Okay, let's jump right into the Pacific Division. Let's just start with the team that is, I guess, maybe somewhat easier to kind of speculate about where they're going this year. The Anaheim Ducks, a team that finished, obviously outside the playoffs. They haven't been in the playoffs in recent years, and the Ducks are in a place where they are likely rebuilding, even though they do bring back their captain Ryan Getzlaf for another year, and they're kind of in this position where it's almost like a holding pattern. You're hoping that your younger guys are able to come in and make an impact, but do the Ducks really want to be good, make the playoffs here? That might be. There's the question. Like, are they trying to win, or are they just trying to be, that team that finishes somewhere between 24 and 32? Because that's sure the way that it looks.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, I can't remember. I think it was Jay Fresh. He's on Twitter anyways, but he does all the wins above replacement percentages, these infographics I love looking at.
Yes, they're great.
Really breaks them down. Yeah. Anyways, he was projecting out points, and I think he had Anaheim second, if not third worst in the NHL to finish the season. Obviously ahead of Buffalo and right in the thick of things with LA and Detroit, I believe. But still, I mean, yes, you're right. This team is definitely in a rebuild window. Obviously, holding on to Ryan Getzlaf. I'm not sure why he didn't want to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, he has his cup. He's probably good. He's settled in there to, Anaheim with his family, I'm sure. And at this point in his career, is just like, yeah, I don't really need to go anywhere else and try to win it.
I also understand with the way that with COVID and stuff being like, why now's like the worst time to move.
Sure.
to a new city. Like, it's one thing if you're like, we're trying to get out of the city and move out into the country, like I just did 6 months ago, where you're trying to almost like escape some of the madness because the people out here don't care nearly as much about it. So it's a little bit different. Whereas, I mean, what's he gonna like? Where's he gonna go to escape it? Nowhere. You might as well just stay where it's familiar. And I mean, what are we looking at him going? Maybe he has like another year after this if he wants to, or maybe he goes, I wouldn't be opposed to getting traded to somebody at the deadline and just kind of taking a shot at another cup. I would get traded to Vegas. I mean,
and I mean, why wouldn't you, right? And again, you know what? I think he's definitely got the potential to be a good deadline acquisition piece for a number of teams. I'm excited for him this year that at least he came back another year, because he's only 18 points away of breaking 1,000 points for his NHL career. Yeah. So hopefully that's in the back of his head, or doesn't jinx himself. And
nobody wants to get stuck on 99, Mike Madonna.
Right.
99, anything 99, it just feels weird. Like,
just
come on,
feels weird.
Really? You couldn't have played one more game? No, not if Mike Babcock benches you. So Getzlaf will be fine as long as they don't hire Babcock. I think really when I look at the Ducks, we talk about Getzlaf being a free agent, but the Ducks really do have some high-end players that are about to become unrestricted free agents at the end of this season. You've got Rickard Rakell up front. Every team's looking for a guy like Rickard Rakell. He's not expensive, $3.79444 million cap hit. I don't know where that number came from, but Rickard Rakell, what team doesn't want to add somebody who's pretty much every year a guaranteed, like if we're in a full season, he's like a 50-point guy. He's a 20-goal scorer at least, and you can really play him up and down your lineup, and he's going to score no matter where he is, and he's he can fit under the cap, and so I think he's. There's no way he's not gone at some point in the season, in my mind. Anaheim's going to try to recoup some assets here as they head into this season. I think they give Rickard Rakell every opportunity to show that he's still a very valuable player on any team, that he will be. He's going to get first line minutes, like top 6 minutes, and he'll probably run with it. And it's a contract year, and maybe you see Rickard Rakell go out and have a career year. Maybe like he had 69 points in 77 games in 17-18 with 34 goals. That's a pretty great year. But in terms of what he's been able to do the last 3 seasons, I think we're gonna see a player who's going to be motivated to go make some money.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think easily a 3rd-round pick in return for him if they do deal him at the deadline, and probably a little bit more depending on how the season goes.
Yeah, definitely, probably at least a 2nd-round pick, especially because he's so cheap. Teams aren't going to have to give up. Nobody's going to have to do a little 3-way trade where they have to give up a 5th-round pick to have somebody snag $1 million. Like, it's not going to be an issue because he's so inexpensive.
Yeah, and then on the back end, when you talk about free agents, I mean. Gosh, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, these are 2 top 4 defensemen that are not only Josh Manson's a right-handed shot too, but he's such a leader in that locker room that he's going to leave a huge void on that back end when inevitably I think both these guys are probably going to walk out the door. I'm not sure, Josh Manson at knocking on the door of 30 years old. I'm not sure if he wants to hang around for a rebuild for another 4 years.
He does have a no trade clause but he just submits a 12-team no trade, so kind of no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can still find wiggle room for him there. Hampus Lindholm, obviously nothing to hinder the team from moving him. Still a fantastic puck moving defenseman, and at $5 million, I think teams can find a way to wiggle it. And let me just say this: if Tampa Bay can find a way to get Denny Savard on their roster, any team can get Hampus Lindholm's contract on there.
Very, very true. Yes, David Savard, not Denny Savard was a little water bug guy doing spinoramas in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Hampus Lindholm, you're essentially, this guy's not too far removed, maybe a season or two, where people were talking. He's a number 1 defenseman. Last year, he's hurt basically all year. Like, he only played 18 games last year, so it's hard to tell maybe where he's coming in. But my guess is the Ducks are going to be, they're going to be giving Manson, Lindholm, Rakell. They're going to be giving these guys opportunities to show what they're worth, because it will pay dividends for the Ducks as the season goes along. And maybe you even see one of these guys being dealt long before the the draft or the deadline because they can get more. The thing on the defensive side, though, is they really don't have many NHL defensemen. Like, they, at this point on Cap Friendly, they've got 5 defensemen that are currently signed. And then, you look up and down their minor league roster, and I mean, what do you want? Like Greg Paterin to come up and be your 6th defenseman? That doesn't sound great. I mean, Jamie Drysdale, I know that everyone's hoping that he'll make the jump, but the guy's 19 years old and probably not quite ready to play big minutes in the NHL. These are their 6th overall pick in the 2020 draft. You probably are assuming that they don't want to have him like rotting up with a really bad team playing third pairing minutes. That's not what you want. So chances are Drysdale plays most of the year in the minors, and that's probably the Ducks' biggest concern at this point is going to be who can they get. They need to actually be able to ice an NHL roster, and you can't do that if you were to ditch both Lindholm and Manson, let alone one of them at this point. They probably need to go out, sign people, or have some lower ledge defenseman coming back in return just so that they have a semblance of an NHL team. They have to look like they're sort of trying, I guess.
Right. And that's the thing. If they do move one of these 2 guys, and if not both of them, there's definitely going to be some salary coming back. And I reckon it's probably going to be, that $1 million, base salary for just a number 6, number 7 defenseman that they have on their roster that maybe this contending team doesn't really care about losing.
Right.
To bring in a guy like that, for sure.
They do have plenty of cap space. So there's players that are still out there unsigned at this point, and those guys are going to go for probably somewhere close to like a league minimum kind of deal. And I mean, it's hard to believe the guys that are still UFAs that are out there right now. I mean, you'd think that somebody would be like, yeah, let's take a flyer on Zach Parise. Like, why not? I mean,
right? Let's be honest. The rumor came out. He confirmed that he has signed a deal with the Islanders.
Oh, I didn't actually see that. Where was I?
Yeah, but they just haven't filed it yet.
It's all those, all those deals that they just signed like in one day. Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Where I actually heard, I think they have a bunch of these deals signed. They're just not announcing them, kind of thing. So, I mean, but still, you've got Travis Zajac, Ryan Donato, Tyler Bozak still out there, Bobby Ryan, who was having a nice year with Detroit, Eric Stahl, who, as much as his faults are, he can, if he's signed for cheap, he could definitely be a good presence on a 4th line. Alex Galchenyuk played well with the Leafs and moved up and down the lineup. He was all right. Like there's still some decent talent out there. Tyler Ennis. I mean, there's Franz Nielsen bought out by Detroit. I don't know if anybody's going to be willing to give him too much, but it'll be interesting to see where some of these lower level free agents, but guys who fill in rosters. It's almost like nobody's trying to fill their roster in. I mean, you've got David Backes just kind of hanging out there. I know that he's been garbage, but you never know what team will bring back a player like that. Who knows? I didn't mean David Backes. Who am I thinking of?
Maybe Joe Thornton?
Maybe that's who I'm. Yeah, I don't know where my brain just went, but David Backes isn't playing anymore. I don't think. I think he's probably good and gone, right? He played like 15 games last year.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, listen, there's plenty of guys out there that I think teams are going to wait till they get to training camp, see what they got, and then they're going to pull the trigger. I think at a few of these guys and say, hey, you know what? We don't have what we thought, or some of these guys just aren't ready, and so let's bring in some veteran guys here. Yep.
And I mean, the guys who didn't get some their qualifying offers that are relatively young, like a Mark Jankowski. He's 26 years old. Take a flyer on him. You think there's somebody like Michael Dow Cole. He's out there too. But anyways, there's players to be had and to fill out a roster if you need players who can sort of play still. All right, let's go to the LA Kings. The LA Kings, I think, are beyond maybe San Jose and Anaheim. I think this division is wide open. Like truly, I don't see San Jose make the playoffs. I don't see Anaheim making the playoffs. Anyone else could make the playoffs in this division, in my mind. And LA is the team that has been rebuilding now for 4 years, and some of a lot of their key pieces have stuck around during this rebuild, and it appears that they're ready to go, right? Like, they signed Philip Deneau in the offseason. They trade for Victor Arvidsson. They are doing what they need to do. They bring in Alexander Edler as a free agent. I mean, is this team poised to make a run at this in the Pacific that's pretty weak?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think LA is primed to steal one of those top 3 spots in the Pacific. And you know what? I love the moves that they made during the offseason, mostly because for me, I think Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte, these two these are going to be their future number 1 and number 2, centermen down the middle. And I think, by bringing in a guy like Philip Deneau, who's just such a good two-way player, and they signed him for long-term, maybe a little bit longer than I feel comfortable with, but long enough to where, again, 2 or 3 years, they allow these guys to really mature and develop on that third line. They can play protected minutes, get some limited power play time, get the ability to maybe, not have to face the top-pairing defensive, guys on the opposing team
and
really
huge.
Shine.
Especially since, this last season was a dumpster fire for younger players. Like, right. In my mind, just so hard to develop well when everything's kind of crazy and up in the air. And fortunately, Byfield able to play in the AHL last year, and he put up some decent numbers, like 20 points in 32 games. In the World Juniors, he was good, and so in his 6 games with LA, didn't make much of an impact. He had a one helper, but you got to expect coming into this year now with a normal off season. They've got their rookie camps, and they're having the normal routine of what a player coming into an organization would experience. I think you're going to see a much better return on Byfield this season. Him and Turcotte are both likely going to make this team, and it's going to be fun. Like, I think they're probably still on the outside looking in when all is said and done, but I think they're probably more like the Ottawa Senators this past season, where kind of a rough start, different points of the season where they just can't seem to win, but they really find themselves by the end of the year. Their younger players have their role, they understand it, and they're playing at the where they feel like they can be, and we kind of get a glimpse of what this team will look like in the future. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's enough. However, I guess the biggest difference is you've got some veterans up front. Now, you mentioned Deneau, you've got Kopitar and Dustin Brown and Victor Arvidsson and Alex Iafallo, decent top 6 forwards who, if these younger guys just can't cut it, they can at least hold their own. And I think defensively they'll be better having Edler up there, but ultimately that's probably their downfall, is their back end. Just once you get beyond Drew Doughty, there's really no one that is going to knock your socks off on this defensive core, and that's probably just the biggest downside for them.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's really not a lot of guys that are going to push the pace and produce offensively for this team on the back end. I mean, yeah, they managed to lock up Matt Roy and Sean Walker for a few more years, but those guys aren't, like you said, guys that jump off the page, right? Alexander Edler, he's fine, but I don't really see him much more than a 4-5 defenseman for this team.
Right.
You know what? The biggest question mark for me, though, is whether or not I think this team is going to push for one of those playoff spots is going to have to come down to goaltending, right? Because obviously we talked about the defense, right? There's not a lot of guys that can push the needle as far as, offensive, pace goes. But, when they are playing that defensive hockey and trying to, play those low scoring 2-1 games and, chip in and get that extra goal, is Cal Peterson going to be the difference? Jonathan Quick, he's been, in my opinion, not good for the last 3 years. And so I don't expect much out of him, this season at all. So does Cal Peterson play up to his potential as far as a potential number 1A, 1B goaltender and get that extension that maybe I think, LA has been a little hesitant to hand out right now? Or at some point does does LA say, hey, you know what, we got to make a move. We got to bring a guy in here to help us out. Let's go sign somebody. I'm not really sure off the top of my head. Maybe who's available for agent.
There's not much out there in terms of free agent goaltending, and they've mostly been snatched up. But if Cal Peterson plays the way that he played for Team USA in the World Championships, 7 games, 1.29 goals against, and a .953 save percentage, if he can get anywhere close to that, then we're talking. Then we're talking LA in the playoffs. But I think he had a decent year. I mean, a .911 save percentage is fine. He's been good the last 3 years. I mean, really, he's been as good as anyone as anyone that you could ask for. I mean, over almost a .92 save percentage across the board over his last 50 something games. So if he can keep playing like that, he's in good shape. But can LA score is going to be the other side of it, and what kind of high danger chances are they giving up because their defensive core isn't as good and they're not moving the puck as well. That'll be the biggest question. And he played 35 games last year. That's the most he's ever played in the NHL. Can he push that even further? Can Jonathan Quick stay healthy? If he can't, just so many questions.
Yeah, and I think if Victor Arvidsson can get back close to his 30-goal pace, with Danault's two-way ability to kind of shut down and get rid of some of those scoring chances going the other way, I think, this team could really make a push.
Yeah, I think Arvidsson's probably good for 20, somewhere around between 20 and 25. I think 30 might be pushing it now, but you never know. I mean, he's going to likely, maybe he gets to play with Kopitar, and that's a definite game changer. You could also play
versus Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, and go to Kopitar. So.
Right, different level of playmaking and talent overall. Mostly because Kopitar actually can sort of shoot the puck. Ryan Johansson, I don't think he ever learned how. He just doesn't score. Okay, so we'll get back to we'll do playoff predictions at the very end. What we actually think will happen. For now, let's move on to the San Jose Sharks. We'll make a quick mincemeat out of the San Jose Sharks because this team is already turning out to be a dumpster fire. Evander Kane is just sounds like he needs to figure out his life. That's
he's got to go.
Yeah, it's time. Nobody wants him there. He's a giant bag of douche is what I get the sense of. Literally no one wants him. And you know what? Nobody wanted him in Buffalo. Nobody wanted him in Winnipeg. People hate this guy.
Nobody wanted him in Atlanta either. So bye.
Yeah, no, I mean, Atlanta didn't want Atlanta. They didn't want the Thrashers at all. But I mean, Evander Kane is just he needs some help. We'll say that without totally just ripping him apart like I just did a second ago. He needs help, and unfortunately he was their best player last year in terms of scoring. It's going to be hard to replace what really for the Sharks he's been a 30-plus goal scorer. Over the course of a full season, he definitely would score 30 goals every year, and he would put up 60 points. Good luck replacing that. Also came out today that Tomas Hertl is going to see how it goes as far as staying with the Sharks beyond this year. It basically made it sound like he might not want to stay during the year at all. So he's going to see how it goes, and then he might, essentially request a trade, and he'll be gone. So this whole thing is just kind of, it's falling apart. And when you look at this team, you kind of go, well, yeah, they lost all their character. You lost your identity. You let Joe Thornton leaves and Joe Pavelski leaves. Patrick Marleau's gone. Patrick Marleau, well, he was there last year, but he's not the Patrick Marleau who is a good player. He's a third, fourth line player now, and sure he can have some influence, but he's not out there playing. This team really lacks the character, I think, that you need to be a good team and a good franchise. And it just, for whatever reason, this thing has kind of gone off the rails. And, who's to blame? It's Doug Wilson. Like, this thing has gone on too long, and perhaps it's time that the Sharks, maybe find an option where Doug Wilson can move up in the organization and they can bring in some fresh eyes and not let Doug Wilson attempt another rebuild, retooling, as he called it 10 years ago. I just think I don't think it's working, and the Sharks need to make some changes in my mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I think it starts with Tomas Hertl, right? I think you need to jettison him to a team somewhere where he can go be successful and have an opportunity. I mean, in my opinion, I think Tomas Hertl is one of the most underrated two-way forwards in the game. This guy has a great defensive knack.
Oh, who would you rather have, Tomas Hertl or Philip Deneau?
I'd probably take Hertl, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Deneau is nothing. I mean, I think he's just he's the new treat. Like, ooh, he made it to the Stanley Cup final. Look what he did. Yeah, he also scored 2 goals in the whole the whole playoffs. Not like, yes, he was shutting people down, but also he wasn't really tipping the needle in any direction offensively. Whereas Hertl absolutely knocks the needle towards a productive player and somebody who can pull in teammates around him and make them better.
Yeah, and at 27, he's still in his prime. I think this guy is more than capable of still being a 70-point player on a halfway decent team. You put him with a couple really good wingers, and I think he can push the needle towards a point a game right now the way he plays. And especially because I think any team that trades for him is probably going to put him on a second-line center position. I think they'll probably – I mean, honestly, I'd look right at Vegas and be like, this guy would be perfect to center a line with Mark Stone and Pacioretty. I think he could easily put up a point per game with those guys. And you want to talk about a defensive line? I mean, they would shut everybody down. Yeah,
I mean, the San Jose Sharks could just be Vegas's farm team. Just send players up and down.
There you go.
San Jose Sharks, I think, and goaltending wise, they have maybe the two. I mean, Aiden Hill, coming in from Arizona, he'll be okay. James Reimer, he's a good guy. I guess for all the talk about lack of character, James Reimer's at least he's one of the good guys, but he's also an aging backup goaltender. He's not going to have a huge impact on the ice. Hopefully he can have an impact on on that goaltending tandem, give Aiden Hill some support, and Aiden Hill turns out to be a really good goaltender, and that maybe could at least be some of the silver lining for the San Jose Sharks, is if they find a decent goalie, because they have not had one in a long time since they bet the farm on Martin Jones, and it worked for a year, and then it all fell apart. San Jose Sharks, it's sad because they brought in with Carlson and Burns and Vlasic was so hyped. They were so hyped, and then it just never panned out, and now they're just stuck with those people. $11.5 million. That's not going away. At least you can play unlike Bobrovsky in Florida. I guess that's the next comp to me is you've got Bobrovsky, and then probably the next worst contract at this point is Carlson.
Oh boy! Okay.
I mean, he's barely a number 3, number 4 defenseman, making $11.5 million. You could get 4 number 4 defensemen for what he's making. $3 million a year, pretty much.
Brutal. I love it though.
All right, let's who should we sneak over to?
Oh boy,
let's go
Seattle.
Okay, Seattle.
Yeah, let's do it.
The brand new team. I've had quite a bit of time to look at this team since the expansion draft and the entry draft, and I gotta say, goaltending wise, they're definitely in the top 10. I'd say for goaltending tandems, maybe the top 5 might be pushing it, but because I think Grubauer he's good, but he's been really good on, let's see, a team that won the Stanley Cup, and then Colorado, a team that could have won the Stanley Cup, that one of the best teams in the league. Now let's go see how good he is on a team that, they're going to be, they've got some nice pieces. They certainly are not going to be the cream of the crop. So let's see how well he can play in that situation.
You hit it right. You hit the nail on the head, right? Because I actually had that in bold letters on my show notes. I said, never played for a bad team, right? So we're gonna see what this guy's made out of, because obviously, yes, you know what, he doesn't have to play, 60 games this season because he's got a really freaking good backup goaltender. But shoot, it's going to be sink or swim at this point because they've got nobody. I mean, they drafted at the expansion to suck, to build, and to go at this thing long term. They didn't expect to go in like Vegas and have immediate success.
Yeah, so I mean, they're gonna have trouble scoring goals. That's pretty clear. I mean, yeah, you got Mark Giordano, cool, nice name value. Jamie Alexiak, he's tall. Adam Larson, he had maybe his best year, playing for the Oilers last year, but really struggled when he left New Jersey and went to Edmonton at first. So I wonder again, will he have those same struggles? Like, hey, new city, new place. People don't change. People are usually who they are. So, if a new move and that kind of switch kind of throws him off, I don't know. At the same time, at least he wasn't dealt for a superstar. Like, he can shake that off. He doesn't have to have the pressure of knowing, like, okay, I need to be comparable to Taylor Hall. Like, he doesn't have that. So that's good. Nobody's going to be comparing him to Taylor Hall anymore. It doesn't matter. So that's good for that. But defensively, I don't mind the team. Vince Dunn, they based on the players that they have a decent top four. Good depth on defense as well. But I don't know how they're going to score. I really don't know how they're going to score. I think that they're likely going to have to play a very structured game. And based on what I've seen from Dave Haxtell, I just don't know if that's going to be the case. I think he was brought in there to develop, and because remember, he's a college guy, right? Like, I know he was in Philadelphia, but he came from a college program, and his bread and butter is development. So he's there to develop. I'm sure he'd love to win. I'm sure he's not thinking, oh, I'm just here to lose and develop players. No, but I do think that he's there to develop and create a program, create something down the road where they can be good. And based on what they have right now, I think they look like they're the shiny new toy. So you want them to be good because they're the shiny new toy, and Vegas being as good as they were in their first year. There's a lot of expectations that maybe they can pull that off, but I think it's good. They could make the playoffs because the division's so bad, but I think that there's other teams with far more talent, and they've been together longer. Like Vancouver, their core has been together. Edmonton, their core has been together for a long time. LA, their core has been together for a long time. Like, I think that there's some better teams that will find their way into the playoffs, and you bet your money that only 3 teams are going to the playoffs from the Pacific Division.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? So when we talk about teams that have been together for a while, right? When we look at a team like LA, right, we know Deneau and Kopitar, right, are going to be that number 1, number 2 center, right? San Jose, we know Tomas Hertl is going to be up there in that top 6. Well, yeah, we kind of have an idea that we can guess and say, okay, cool, Jaden Schwartz, Eberle, those guys are going to be in the top 6. But after that, I couldn't freaking tell you. I mean, maybe Yanni Gourde might be their number 1 center, and he's never played at any higher than a number 3 center in Tampa in his life. So
right.
Who are you getting, right? I mean, maybe Alexander Wenberg finds a little bit of his mojo from his first season in Columbus, and maybe he can slide in on that top spot. Who really knows, right? So obviously you're going to have a lot of guys trying to figure out where they slot, whereas, like you said, teams that have been together for a while, they kind of know generally where guys are going to play. They know who's the role players, who are the penalty killers, right? With this team, it's all kind of like, okay, well, let's figure out who's good at what works with what guy, and see what we can come up with. And it's going to take a while, so they're going to come out of the gate, and I think either they're gonna fall really, really hard and just look really, really bad, or they're just going to skate by and I think be on thin ice and just barely get by because of a decent defense and good goaltending.
Oh yeah, they could be a 500 team for a little while. I think they've got some decent veterans. I remember also Yanni Gourde will be out until sometime in November. So he's definitely out for at least the first month Could be 2 months, could be longer. I mean, it was shoulder surgery. You just never know with that stuff. Could be sooner, but I just, when I look at that, I don't think this team's trying to be world beaters. There's no point. They're not going to win the cup. So you might as well just bank on the excitement of this team and acquire some really good assets at the draft. And I think that they could do that. I mean, they also have some UFA, like Mark Giordano's a UFA. They could flip him.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys like Carl Yonkrock, Marcus Johansson, teams will line up and they'll pay to get these guys because they're good depth players that a lot of teams would love to have. Right.
I mean, and everybody, here's really, I know everybody's kind of wondering, how long will it take Riley Sheehan to score a goal?
I'm glad you said that.
That's the big question. Okay. So I need to go in a couple minutes. So we're gonna have a part 2 of the Pacific Division. But before we go, who's the one player on Seattle that you see kind of like people don't really know them very well right now, and because of the situation that they've been put in, a brand new team, this player is going to have a breakout year? Who's that player?
Oh boy, if I had to pick anybody, I think honestly Vince Dunn might be the guy, right? Because I think he's got an opportunity to play top line minutes, and I think he's kind of been sitting behind most of his career behind Petrangelo, Colton Parayko, Torrey Krug. He's been playing behind these guys the last few years that maybe he hasn't had an opportunity to shine. I think now it's he has the ability to be a 30-40 point guy, and obviously he's played, in St. Louis where they had a little bit more offensive firepower, but, maybe, hey, he gets to play top line minutes now instead of, the number 3-4 spot. And maybe he has that opportunity. Yeah.
He's a double digit goal scorer, most likely in a full season. And I think he'll probably put up at least 40, 45 points, maybe more, maybe 50 points, which would be fantastic. Especially since he's only at $4 million for the next couple of years. And then he's an RFA, so he's very protected. My pick would be Mason Appleton. He's going to be the guy that, skates under the radar. He had 25 points last year, 12 goals. I think that he's a 25 to 30 goal scorer for this Seattle team. He's my pick. He'll end up in the top 6 and likely on the wing. Might play a little center, mostly on the wing, and he is going to earn himself some money. He's an RFA at the end of the year. And they'll want to get him locked up quick. So my pick's Mason Appleton, and Jets fans will weep in their sleep. All right, that is our show. We'll do part 2 of the Pacific Division next, and let us know what you think of the first half, and let us know, hey, if you have any thoughts on the Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, or the Vegas Golden Knights, let us know. We'll get it in the next show. Find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We will talk to you soon.